Picture this scenario because I guarantee it has happened to you in the last month. It is 5:30 p.m. on a Friday, and you have just finished a 45-hour work week. You're physically present in your car, but your brain is completely fried. Your shoulders are tight, your eyes are burning from staring at screens, and you can barely remember what you accomplished today beyond back-to-back meetings and putting out fires that weren't even your responsibility. So you pull up a delivery app and order Thai food that costs $45 with the tip and fees. You tell yourself, I earned this. But mathematically, you didn't just spend $45. You just paid a hidden tax on your own stress. That $45 represents something deeper. It's the price tag on exhaustion, the convenience fee for a life that's too busy to function. And here's the thing. This isn't a one-time event. This is happening multiple times a week for millions of Americans who think they're doing well because their salary has a comma in it. Most of us are anchored to a version of reality that hasn't existed for 20 years. Our parents' generation could buy a house on a single income, take vacations without going into debt, and retire with dignity. But we're operating in a completely different economic landscape while using the same mental scorecards from 1995. In 1995, earning $100,000 was rich money, the kind of salary that meant you'd made it, that you could exhale and stop worrying. But today, $100,000 is the inflation-adjusted equivalent of roughly $48,000 in the 90s. The label says executive, but the math says survival. The job title sounds impressive at dinner parties, but your bank account tells a different story. Today, we are performing a forensic audit on the six-figure lie to find your real hourly wage and show you why you feel broke despite making a good salary. We're going to pull back the curtain on the greatest accounting fraud of the modern era, the one you're committing against yourself every single day. My name is Stick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, compound interest, and the invisible equations that keep people stuck in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. I've analyzed thousands of personal finance situations, and I can tell you that the people who feel the most trapped aren't the ones making minimum wage. They know their constraints. It's the people making $60,000, $80,000, even $120,000 who feel like they're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up no matter how fast they move. If you want to stop being a financial sleepwalker and actually understand how wealth building works, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to show you will fundamentally change how you think about every dollar you earn and every hour you trade. The cost of goods sold. From the moment we graduate, we are told our value is defined by our gross annual salary. It's the first question at high school reunions, the measuring stick for success. The number we use to judge whether we're doing okay or falling behind. If you make $80,000 a year, you think you're making roughly $40 an hour. You do the simple division. 80,000 divided by 2,000 working hours equals $40. That number feels good. It feels solid. It feels like proof that you're a functioning adult who made decent choices. But here's the problem. That math is a lie, and it's the exact same lie that kills businesses every single day. In the business world, looking at revenue without looking at expenses is how companies go bankrupt. If a bakery sells $1 million of bread but spends $1 million on flour, ovens, rent, utilities, and labor, it's worth zero. Any investor looking at that balance sheet would run screaming. Yet somehow, when it comes to analyzing our own labor, we use the same flawed logic that would get a CEO fired. If a company sells $80,000 worth of products, but it costs them $79,000 to produce those products, they're not a successful enterprise. They're a hobby with a cash flow problem. Yet this is exactly how most of us operate. We celebrate the revenue number without ever calculating our cost of goods sold. And the good being sold is your life, your energy, your time, your mental bandwidth, your physical health, and the relationships you're sacrificing while you're busy being productive. You are essentially running a high-churn, low-margin business where you are the product, and most of you are selling yourself at a mathematical loss. You're the inventory. You're the manufacturing facility, and you're running at such razor-thin margins that one unexpected expense, a medical bill, a car repair, a wedding invitation, can push you into the red. This isn't about being dramatic. This is about applying basic business accounting principles to the most important asset you have, yourself. Monetary leaks. Let's perform a brutal audit of a hypothetical worker making $80,000. I want you to get a piece of paper because we're going to track every single leak in your financial pipeline. And by the end of this, you're going to understand why your bank account never seems to match what HR tells you you're worth. Before that money hits your account, the government takes its cut. Federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, Medicare, these aren't optional. For someone making $80,000, you're losing roughly 30% right off the top. That's $24,000 gone before you see a dime. Your $40 an hour just became $28 instantly. But that's the easy math. The part that shows up on your pay stub, that's the leak you can see. Now we have to subtract the vampire costs of having the job, the expenses that slowly drain you without ever announcing themselves. First, the commute. The average American spends between $3,000 and $8,000 a year on gas, maintenance, insurance, and depreciation, just to get to the building where the money is made. Let's be conservative and call it $4,000. That's another $2 an hour gone. You're now down to $26 an hour, and we're just getting started. Second, the cost of appearance. You can't roll into the office in pajamas or sweatpants. You need professional clothes, and those clothes need to be maintained. Dry cleaning, shoe replacements, haircuts that cost more than $15 because you need to look the part. Add another $1,500 a year minimum. We're at $25.25 an hour now. Third is the convenience tax, the invisible killer that nobody talks about. Because you're at the office, you buy the $5 coffee for the 2 p.m. meeting because the office coffee tastes like cardboard and defeat. You grab the $15 lunch because you didn't have time to prep meals on Sunday because you were recovering from last week. You pick up dinner on the way home twice a week because cooking feels impossible when you're this drained. That's easily $3,000 a year, probably more. Now you're at $23.75 an hour. Fourth, and this is the one nobody wants to admit, decompression spending. This is the money you spend to numb the pain of the job. The Friday night bar tab where you and your coworkers collectively vent about management. The impulsive online shopping at 11 p.m. Because retail therapy is the only thing that makes you feel like you have control over something. The weekend trip you can't afford because you tell yourself you deserve a break after the week you just had. The streaming services you're subscribed to but barely use because you're too tired to even choose what to watch. When you're honest about it, this is another $4,000 to $6,000 a year. When you add the car, the clothes, the convenience tax, and the numbness, your $80,000 gross might actually be a $45,000 net. You've gone from $40 an hour to $22.50 an hour, and we haven't even addressed the biggest lie yet, the time calculation itself, the shadow work. Here's where it gets truly disturbing. Your wage is a function of money divided by time. Simple equation, right? But while HR says you work 40 hours, that is a mathematical fiction designed to make the exchange seem fair. Let's audit your actual time commitment to your employer. You wake up earlier than you'd naturally wake up because you have to be somewhere at a specific time. You spend 30 minutes minimum grooming for the employer. Shower, hair, makeup, shaving, putting on clothes you wouldn't choose if you were working from home. That's 2.5 hours a week just on appearance. Then there's the 60 minutes commuting each way. That's 10 hours a week sitting in traffic or on public transportation, where you're not being paid, but you're also not free. You can't go to the gym. You can't pick up your kids from school. You can't run errands. You're in employment purgatory. Not working, but not living either. Now you arrive at work, but you're not actually working 9 to 5. You're there from 9 to 5, which is different. There's the mandatory lunch hour where you are held captive by the office. Sure, technically you could leave and drive somewhere, but realistically, you're eating at your desk or in the break room, still surrounded by the job, still mentally trapped in work mode. That's 5 hours a week that you're giving to the employer without it counting as work. Then you get home. And here's the invisible time cost that nobody calculates: decompression time. You spend 30 minutes staring at a wall or scrolling mindlessly because your brain is so fried that you can't even form coherent thoughts. You vent to your partner about your boss for 20 minutes. You lie in bed Sunday night with anxiety about Monday morning, losing 45 minutes of sleep. This is what sociologists call shadow work. The unpaid labor that supports your paid labor. If you add it up honestly, you aren't working 40 hours. You're dedicating somewhere between 55 and 65 hours a week to your employment. Let's be conservative and call it 60 hours. That's 3,000 hours a year, not 2,000, the real wage. Now let's do the real math, the math that explains why you feel poor despite having a good job. We take your whittled down net income of $45,000 after taxes, after commuting, after all the costs required to maintain the job, and divide it by the true committed time of 3,000 hours a year. Suddenly, that $40 an hour evaporates into thin air like it was never real to begin with. You might actually be making $15 an hour. In high-stress scenarios in expensive cities, you could be making $11 an hour after you account for everything. Let that sink in for a moment. You went to college. You have a professional title. You wear business casual. You attend strategy meetings. And your true hourly wage might be less than someone working at Chipotle. In many cases, you are mathematically making less than the teenager flipping burgers who walks to work, spends nothing on professional clothes, and leaves his stress at the fry station when his shift ends. He goes home and actually has a life. You go home and need 2 hours to remember what having a life feels like. This math exposes the trap of the golden handcuffs, where you take a promotion for $10,000 more. But your stress and expenses skyrocket, actually lowering your real hourly wage. You think you're climbing the ladder, but you're actually digging yourself deeper into a hole while the hole gets more expensive to maintain. The margin strategy. So what do we do with this information? The solution isn't necessarily quitting your job tomorrow and moving to a commune. It's about ruthlessly optimizing your real hourly wage by treating yourself like the business you actually are. If you negotiate working from home 2 days a week, you save gas and 4 hours of commuting, giving yourself a massive raise without the company paying a dime more. You just reclaimed 4 hours of your life and cut your commuting costs by 40%. That's worth thousands of dollars a year in both money and sanity. Start treating your labor like a business, because that's what it is. A smart business owner doesn't just increase revenue, they increase margin. The margin is what you keep. The margin is your actual wealth. If you make $50,000 but spend only $20,000 and work 30 hours a week, you are a highly profitable enterprise with excellent margins compared to the $100,000 earner spending $95,000 who works 60 hours a week. One person is building wealth. The other is just surviving with a better job title. Look at every expense through the lens of your real hourly wage. If you're making $15 an hour after all costs, that $80 restaurant meal isn't $80. It's 5.3 hours of your life. The $40,000 car isn't $40,000. It's 2,666 hours of commuting, meetings, emails, and stress. Suddenly, the math changes your behavior in ways that budgeting apps never could. I've created the true wage calculator concept. This weekend, sit down with brutal honesty. Plug in your commute, your taxes, your work wardrobe costs, your takeout because I'm tired spending, your decompression purchases. Add up all the hours you actually dedicate to your employment. Divide your net pay by your total committed hours and write that number on a sticky note. Put it on your bathroom mirror. Next time you go to buy a $200 gadget, look at that note. If your real wage is $10, ask yourself, is this worth 20 hours of sitting in traffic and dealing with passive-aggressive emails from Karen in accounting? That friction, that moment of confrontation with reality, will save you more than any budgeting app, any financial advisor, any motivational quote ever could. Because once you see the real math, you can't unsee it. And that's when you start making different choices. That's when you start building actual wealth instead of just surviving with a nicer job title. If this video made you rethink your paycheck, subscribe and share it with a coworker who looks tired. We can math our way out of the trap together. Drop a comment with your real hourly wage after you calculate it. I want to hear what you discover, because I guarantee it's going to shock you. Let's stop lying to ourselves and start building lives that actually work.